You know, you've been told basically your entire life that the only way to achieve your goals is to just obsess over the result.
Oh, absolutely. The hustle culture.
Right. Hustle harder, visualize the prize, keep your eyes locked on the reward, and just never let up. I mean, that is the modern gospel of success.
It really is.
But what if I told you that one of the oldest, most revered psychological operating manuals in human history claims that caring about the result is the exact thing guaranteeing your failure?
Or at least guaranteeing your misery.
Exactly. Guaranteeing your misery. Welcome to the deep dive.
It completely flips the script on how we are conditioned to operate. The text we're looking at today argues that hyper-fixating on the outcome doesn't just make you anxious. It actually, well, it actively degrades the quality of the action itself. It blinds you.
Which is such a wild paradigm shift. Today, we are taking on the absolute climax, like the grand finale of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18.
The big one.
The big one. This is the moment where Krishna synthesizes this massive, epic journey. He brings together renunciation, duty, devotion, and knowledge.
All of it.
Yeah, he weaves all these intricate threads together to guide the seeker, to guide you, the listener, toward absolute, unshakable liberation.
It's basically the ultimate masterclass in integrating a deeply spiritual life with a highly active, highly demanding physical existence.
Right, because we still have to live in the real world. And before we jump into how to actually achieve that, a quick reminder to our listeners. If you want to keep exploring these incredible texts with us, please make sure to subscribe to Simplified Awakening.
Drop a like on this deep dive.
Yes, drop a like and share your reflections in the comments. We genuinely love seeing how you apply these ancient frameworks to your very modern lives.
We really do. And taking chapter 18 as a cohesive vision is so crucial, especially when we view it through the incredibly sharp philosophical lens of Adi Shankaracharya.
His commentary is just amazing.
Foundational. I mean, his commentary on this text is the bedrock. Shankaracharya makes it undeniably clear that true liberation, moksha, is not an escape hatch.
Right.
It is not about abandoning your responsibilities, giving away all your stuff, and, finding a quiet cave in the Himalayas to hide from the world.
Because, I mean, the mind just comes with you into the cave.
Exactly.
If you're anxious in a boardroom, you're going to be anxious in a monastery. It's about entirely different things. You'll be stressing over whether your meditation cushion is aligned correctly or something.
Right. The ego always finds a way to assert itself.
Yeah.
Just change the scenery. Shankaracharya's perspective is that moksha comes through a very specific, active progression.
Okay. Active.
Yes. It requires selfless action right in the thick of the world, profound and unwavering devotion, and ultimately the complete realization of the self.
It's an internal revolution, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what we're building towards today is Krishna's final supreme assurance that complete radical surrender to the divine is the ultimate path.
But to get to that ultimate state of surrender, though, we kind of have to start where Arjuna starts, right on the battlefield.
Yes, ground zero.
He is overwhelmed. He is facing this impossible cosmic dilemma. And yet he grounds the entire conversation with a surprisingly technical, almost mundane question.
He basically asks, well, how do I actually go about giving things up?
Right. He's looking at these two distinct Sanskrit concepts that sound incredibly similar to anyone just casually reading the text. Sannyasa and Tyaga.
Most people read those words and think they both just mean renunciation or throwing your stuff away.
But Shankaracharya draws a massive line in the sand between them.
A huge line. The distinction Arjuna asks for sets the actual rules of engagement for how we're supposed to act in reality.
Yeah.
Arjuna is pleading for clarity here.
Because the battlefield he is standing on is literal, but psychologically, it's the exact same battlefield we stand on every single morning when we wake up and face our obligations.
That's exactly. He wants to know the definitive truth about sannyasa, which we often translate as formal renunciation, versus tyaga, which is more accurately translated as abandonment or detachment.
And I really want you, the listener, to pay special attention right here to Krishna's teaching on renunciation and detachment, because it completely redefines what it actually means to give things up.
It really does. It challenges every modern notion of productivity.
Completely. So Krishna steps in with this razor-sharp definition.
Right. He tells Arjuna that sannyasa is the giving up of actions that are driven by a desire for a specific personal reward.
Okay, so if you are undertaking a massive project purely because you want the bonus, the fame, the social validation, or even like a guaranteed spot in heaven, giving up that heavily motivated, desire-driven action is sannyasa.
You are renouncing the desire-prompted action itself.
Meaning you literally stop doing the things that are solely fueled by your own ego's wish list.
Exactly.
But if that's sannyasa, what is tyaga? Because they really do sound like they are orbiting the exact same concept.
They are related, sure, but Tyaga is the broader, more universally applicable psychological tool. Krishna explains that Tyaga is the abandonment of the results of all works.
The results?
This is where it gets incredibly profound. You still perform the action. You still show up to the battlefield or the office or the kitchen, but you completely, radically drop your psychological demand for the fruit of that action.
Wow.
You sever the emotional umbilical cord between your effort and the outcome.
And Krishna doubles down on this, doesn't he, by saying you should never abandon acts of sacrifice, charity, and austerity.
Never. He calls them the purifiers for the wise.
So the text isn't saying, go sit on a rock and do nothing. It's saying go be intensely active, be charitable, be disciplined, but the very moment the action is finished, just walk away from the result.
The text gets incredibly granular about human psychology right here. It recognizes that why you give something up matters far more than what you give up.
Right, the intention.
Yes. So Krishna breaks down this concept of Tyaga, this abandonment, into 3 distinct types. Because the human ego is incredibly tricky.
Oh, it's so tricky.
It can masquerade as spiritual detachment when it is actually just acting out of sheer laziness or fear.
Okay, let's unpack those 3 types because I think everyone listening will instantly recognize these in themselves. I know I did.
Oh, definitely.
First, there's Tamasic abandonment. The text describes this as being rooted in darkness or delusion. This is when you give up your obligatory duties, the things you absolutely should be doing out of sheer ignorance, laziness, or confusion.
Think of the person who abandons their family responsibilities or their physical health, claiming they are, practicing non-attachment.
Or just going with the flow.
Right, going with the flow. It is the illusion of detachment masking deep irresponsibility. They aren't transcending the material world, they are just failing to meet its basic requirements.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then there's a second type, Rajasic abandonment, which is rooted in passion, agitation, or fear.
This is a very common one today.
It really is. This is giving up an action simply because it causes physical suffering or because it's mentally exhausting. You abandon the duty just because you fear the bodily strain.
You quit the marathon at mile 20, not because you've transcended the need to run, but because your legs hurt and your ego wants comfort.
And Shankaracharya's commentary is brutally honest about Rajasic abandonment, isn't it?
Brutal. He notes that giving up a duty just because it's difficult yields absolutely no spiritual fruit. You haven't evolved, you've just coddled yourself.
Ouch.
Yeah. You've allowed the aversion to pain to dictate your choices, which means you are still completely a slave to the sensory world. You're just as bound by avoiding pain as you are by chasing pleasure.
Which brings us to the absolute gold standard of detachment, Sattvic abandonment. Rooted in purity, clarity, and goodness.
The ideal state.
This is performing a duty simply because it must be done, because it is inherently right, while entirely dropping the attachment to the result.
You perform the action as an offering. You do it with absolute excellence, bringing all your skill and focus to bear, but you accept whatever outcome arises, success, failure, praise, or criticism, with total equanimity.
Okay, I have to push back on this, though, because it sounds incredibly idealistic.
Sure.
How can a modern person do something deeply demanding without caring about the result? That sounds like going to your job, putting in a full 60-hour week of intense creative labor, but genuinely not caring if the company pays you at the end of the month.
Or building a startup and not caring if it goes bankrupt.
Exactly. If you don't care about the outcome, where does the motivation to do excellent work even come from? Doesn't that just naturally lead to apathy?
That is the exact paradox the modern mind struggles with. And Shankaracharya anticipates it beautifully.
Does he?
He does. The misunderstanding lies in equating detachment with apathy. Apathy is Tamasic, it's a lack of energy and care. Sattvic detachment is hyper-engaged.
Okay, explain that.
Shankaracharya points to verse 11, which explicitly states, since it is not possible for one who holds on to a body to give up actions entirely. As long as you have a body, you are acting.
Your heart beats, your lungs expand.
You consume resources, you are inherently entangled in the machinery of the world.
Right.
Therefore, true renunciation isn't about halting the machinery. It's an internal shift in the operating system. When you work at your job, you don't do it solely for the paycheck. The paycheck is a secondary byproduct of the value you provide.
Okay.
You do the work, because it is your duty in that moment to execute your skills flawlessly.
Hmm.
The motivation shifts from extraction, like, what can I get from this, to contribution. What does this moment require of me?
Okay. So the focus narrows entirely to the quality of the action itself. If I'm an archer, my duty is to hold the bow correctly, gauge the wind, control my breathing, and release the arrow with perfect form. The moment the arrow leaves the string, the outcome is out of my hands. A gust of wind could blow it completely off course. If my mind is completely consumed by whether or not I hit the bullseye, my hands will shake.
That is the perfect visualization of Tyaga. The anxiety of the outcome actively degrades the performance of the duty.
Wow.
Sattvic abandonment frees you to be a master archer. You act from a place of freedom and immense focus rather than a place of desperate calculation. You are no longer held hostage by the future. You are completely sovereign in the present moment.
That is so powerful. But if true renunciation is this internal psychological state, we really need to understand the underlying forces that are making us so desperate for outcomes in the first place.
We do.
Why are we so naturally inclined toward the Rajasic hustle or the Tamasic apathy? This leads us directly into the psychological operating system of the entire Gita, the three Gunas.
Yes, to truly master our actions, we have to pop the hood and look at the engine. Krishna introduces the concept that all of phenomenal reality, literally everything in the material and psychological universe, is woven from three fundamental threads, or qualities, called gunas.
And these aren't just personality types, right?
No, they are the fundamental forces of nature.
So those three forces are Sattva, representing purity, light, and harmony; Rajas, representing passion, energy, movement, and agitation; and Tamas, representing darkness, inertia, delusion, and decay.
Krishna uses this exact framework to diagnose every single aspect of human experience. He starts by looking at how these gunas affect our knowledge, literally how we perceive reality.
And the way the gunas shape our perception is profound. Let's start with Sattvic knowledge.
Sattvic knowledge is the ability to see one single, undivided, eternal entity in all diversified things. It is the perception of profound underlying unity.
Like seeing the forest instead of just a bunch of random trees.
Even deeper than that. When a Sattvic mind looks at the world, it doesn't ignore the differences between people, animals, or nature, but it recognizes the shared fundamental consciousness beneath all of it.
If Sattva is unity, then Rajasic knowledge must be the exact opposite. It's the worldview of absolute fragmentation.
Yes. Rajasic knowledge sees all beings as entirely separate, distinct, and isolated entities. It views the world as a chaotic arena of competing egos.
Us versus them.
Exactly. Every person is an island, every resource is scarce, and every interaction is a zero-sum game. It is a highly analytical, but ultimately very anxious way of perceiving the universe.
And then there is Tamasic knowledge, which is just pure delusion. Krishna says this is when someone clings to one tiny fragmented part of reality and insists it is the entire truth, completely devoid of reason.
It is the ultimate tunnel vision. It's bigotry, fanaticism, and profound ignorance. It mistakes the superficial for the profound.
A modern analogy for this just popped into my head. Tamasic knowledge is like looking through a tiny keyhole into a massive mansion and seeing nothing but a dark closet.
Oh, I like this.
And you stubbornly insist that the entire universe is just a dark closet, and you violently reject anyone who says otherwise. You just refuse to open the door.
Right.
Rajasic knowledge is finally opening the door, stepping inside the mansion, but immediately getting overwhelmed by the sheer number of rooms. You obsess over how the kitchen is painted red, the living room is blue, the furniture doesn't match, and you spend your whole life frantically trying to categorize and separate every single object, stressed by the chaos of diversity.
And Sattvic knowledge?
Sattvic knowledge is walking through that same mansion, seeing the red kitchen and the blue living room, but realizing that despite the different paint colors and functions, it is all part of one single, interconnected foundation. You appreciate the diversity, but you are grounded in the unity of the whole structure.
That analogy captures the essence perfectly.
Yes.
And the crucial point Shankaracharya makes here is that this operating system doesn't just dictate how we philosophically know the world, it aggressively dictates how we act in it.
The threefold division of action.
Yes, it's a direct byproduct of how we perceive reality.
Let's break down those actions. Sattvic action is described as the obligatory duty performed without likes or dislikes, and completely free from the desperate desire for a reward. It is clean, balanced, and sustainable.
Because the Sattvic mind perceives unity, its actions are naturally harmonious. There's no desperate grasping, because it doesn't feel like it's lacking anything fundamental.
Which is such a contrast to Rajasic action.
Vastly different. Rajasic action, the text says, is performed with massive egotism, immense physical and mental strain, and an absolute desperation for results.
That is the defining characteristic of modern burnout culture. We literally glorify Rajasic action.
They really do.
We celebrate the CEO who sleeps 3 hours a night, alienates their family, and runs themselves into the ground to hit a quarterly metric. We call that drive, but the Gita calls it an agonizing symptom of a fragmented mind.
It is highly strenuous, because the ego is constantly trying to bend reality to its will. It requires a tremendous amount of psychic energy to maintain the illusion of absolute control.
So exhausting.
And finally, Tamasic action is action undertaken blindly. It ignores the consequences, it ignores the potential loss or injury to others, and it completely ignores one's own actual capacity. It is reckless, destructive, and born of sheer confusion.
We can also see how these gunas manifest in the agent, the actual doer of the action. Like, how does the person themselves behave?
The Sattvic agent is described as being completely free from egoistic attachment. They are steady, possessing immense fortitude, and they remain entirely unshaken in the face of both success and failure. They are a rock.
If Rajasic action is frantic, the Rajasic agent must be exhausted. The text describes them as greedy, often cruel in their pursuit of goals, and constantly tossed around by a manic depressive cycle. Euphoric joy when things go their way, and crushing, devastating sorrow when they don't.
Their emotional state is entirely outsourced to the external world.
Exactly. And the Tamasic agent is characterized as dishonest, malicious, chronically lazy, and prone to endless procrastination. They lack the energy of Rajas and the clarity of Sattva. So for the listener trying to digest this massive framework, what is the ultimate utility of categorizing every thought and action into these 3 buckets? Why do this exercise?
Well, Shankaracharya views the gunas as the very fabric of Maya, the grand illusion of the material world. They are the actual mechanisms that bind the pure, actionless consciousness, what the text calls the knower of the field or the soul to the physical body.
Okay.
We suffer because we falsely identify with these gunas. We say, I am angry, or I'm tired, or I'm ambitious, when in reality it is just the rajas or tamas fluctuating in the mind.
We mistake the weather for the sky.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Recognizing which guna is driving your knowledge, your action, and your sense of self in any given moment is the vital first step to untangling yourself from the illusion. You have to be able to diagnose your internal operating system before you can systematically upgrade it to sattva.
But the rabbit hole goes even deeper. The gunas don't just govern our external actions or our philosophical worldview. They completely dictate our deepest internal faculties. They format our intellect, our resolve, and our very definition of what happiness is.
We're moving from the external expressions of the gunas to the raw architecture of the human mind. Let's look at the intellect, or buddhi. This is our capacity for discernment, our ability to judge right from wrong.
According to Krishna, a sattvic intellect is razor sharp. It knows exactly what frees the soul and what binds it. It knows intrinsically what ought to be done and what ought to be avoided. It possesses clear moral and spiritual vision without needing to constantly calculate the odds.
A Rajasic intellect, however, is constantly confused. It operates in a murky, self-serving gray area. It can't quite distinguish between virtue and vice because its judgment is always clouded by personal desire.
It rationalizes.
Constantly. It will justify unethical behavior if the reward is high enough, twisting logic to serve its ambition.
And the Tamasic intellect is terrifying, honestly. It is completely inverted. It literally thinks vice is virtue. It looks at what is deeply harmful and destructive and genuinely believes it is good.
It's completely enveloped in darkness.
You can see this in societal decay, where destructive behaviors are celebrated and discipline is mocked.
Absolutely. And this clarity or darkness in the intellect directly feeds into our fortitude, our resolve, what the Sanskrit calls driti. Sattvic resolve is unswerving.
Unswerving.
It is the profound ability to maintain absolute control over the wandering mind and the turbulent senses, keeping them rigidly aligned with the highest truth. It's the stamina to stay the course.
Rajasic resolve is stubborn, but for the wrong reasons. It fiercely clings to wealth, pleasure, and social status. It has incredible stamina, but it's entirely driven by the expectation of future rewards.
And Tamasic resolve. That is the stubborn refusal to let go of sleep, fear, grief, and despair. It is a pathological commitment to one's own misery.
Wow.
It's the person who defends their right to be a victim, clinging to their grief as an identity.
Which brings us to perhaps the most fascinating and counterintuitive teaching in the entire chapter, the paradox of happiness, or sukham. The way Krishna categorizes happiness completely shatters our modern dopamine-driven understanding of well-being.
It really does.
This blew my mind the first time I read it. Krishna says that true spiritual happiness, Sattvic happiness, feels like absolute poison at first, but turns into nectar at the end.
Poison at first.
Yeah. And Rajasic happiness tastes like pure nectar at first, straight from the contact of the senses with their objects, but inevitably turns into poison at the end. And Tamasic happiness is delusive from beginning to end, born of sleep, laziness, and negligence.
It is a brilliant psychological observation. If we analyze the human experience, we see this play out constantly. The poison Krishna speaks of regarding sattvic happiness is the intense friction of discipline.
Think about the Blinkist level takeaway here for you listening. Let's call it the friction rule. If a choice offers immediate comfort but long-term regret, it's Rajasic. If it offers immediate friction but long-term peace, it's Sattvic.
The ego absolutely despises friction. Think about sitting down to meditate when your mind is racing with 100 unread emails and your body is restless. It feels excruciating. It feels like poison to a mind conditioned for constant stimulation.
Or breaking an addiction.
Yes, breaking a deep-seated addiction. The withdrawal is poisonous.
Like waking up at 5 a.m. in the dead of winter to go train. The alarm clock is the poison. The cold floor is the poison. Your body is screaming to stay under the covers. But by enduring that initial agony, by pushing through the friction, the physical health, the mental clarity, and the profound self-respect you have at 9 a.m. is the nectar.
Sattvic happiness is born of self-mastery. It's durable. Conversely, Rajasic happiness is all instant gratification. It's a dopamine spike. Binge-watching television for 8 hours, eating an entire cake, indulging in toxic but thrilling gossip.
It tastes fantastic in the moment, pure sensory nectar.
But it leaves you feeling lethargic, sick, anxious, and hollow later. The dopamine crashes and it turns to poison.
So the goal is to clarify the intellect using sattva, to endure the poison of discipline, and to arrive at that lasting nectar of peace. But once you have that clarity, what are you supposed to actually do with your life? Does the Gita expect everyone to shave their heads and become monks?
Not at all.
Right. This brings us to one of the most liberating and defining concepts in the text.
We are shifting from the internal architecture of the mind to how you apply that clarified mind in the complex web of society. We are talking about finding your place in the world.
I want you to really lean in and absorb this next concept. It's called Svadharma, which translates to your own duty or your inherent calling. We live in a world infected by the disease of comparison. Social media is a 24/7 highlight reel telling you that you should be a tech billionaire or an influencer living in Bali or a perfectly curated domestic god.
It's exhausting.
The FOMO, the fear of missing out, is paralyzing a whole generation. The Gita's answer to this modern anxiety is incredibly potent.
The text states that duties are born of one's own inherent nature. That unique, specific mix of gunas you possess, your natural inclinations, your specific talents, your psychological temperament, dictates your svadharma. You are wired for a specific type of action.
And Krishna says that a human being attains absolute spiritual success simply by being devoted to their own duty. Not the highest paying duty, not the most culturally glamorous duty, your duty.
Verse 47 is the cornerstone of this philosophy. Krishna tells Arjuna one's own duty, though defective, is superior to another's duty well performed. He goes so far as to say in an earlier chapter that it is better to die in your own duty than to attempt someone else's.
Better to die in it.
Yes. By performing the work dictated by your inherent nature, you incur no sin. You align with the cosmos.
That phrase is so radical, though defective. That means even if I am objectively mediocre at my true calling, let's say I'm naturally wired to be a teacher, but I'm not the most famous teacher, I'm just struggling along in a small school. It is better for my soul to do that than to be a spectacularly wealthy, high-performing investment banker if banking completely contradicts my inherent nature.
Shankaracharya unpacks this beautifully by highlighting a striking metaphor from the text. He points out that all undertakings, every single action in the material world, are surrounded by evil or defects, just as fire is surrounded by smoke.
Fire and smoke, that is such a vivid image.
In the material world, absolute perfection is impossible. Every single path has some flaw, some collateral damage, some inherent suffering. If you are a teacher, the smoke is the low pay and bureaucratic stress. If you are a CEO, the smoke is the immense pressure and lack of personal time.
You just can't escape it.
No, you cannot escape the smoke by jumping out of your own fire and into someone else's fire.
Because the modern illusion is always, well, if I just had their job, if I just had their life, everything would be perfectly clean. There would be no smoke. You see an influencer on a beach and think, that's the fire I want. But you don't see the smoke of chronic algorithmic anxiety, the complete loss of privacy, and the shallow relationships.
It is a mirage. The new fire will always have smoke. You cannot escape defects by assuming someone else's identity. True fulfillment does not come from what you do externally. It comes from the sincere, detached attitude with which you do the thing you were inherently meant to do.
Wow.
When you deeply accept your Svadharma, the frantic anxiety of comparison completely dissolves. You stop looking at the person next to you.
So if you accept your inherent duty and you perform it with Sattvic detachment, meaning you endure the friction, you drop the demand for results, and you offer the action up, what is the ultimate result? What happens to the human mind when it operates with that level of purity?
This leads us to the spiritual payoff: liberation and supreme devotion.
Okay, let's get into that.
This is where we examine what actually occurs when the ego finally burns away in the fire of selfless action. The text introduces a highly technical but beautiful term here: nice karmyasiddhi.
Nice kamyasiddhi.
Yes. This translates to the supreme perfection of being free from the binding effects of action.
To be clear, this doesn't mean you stop moving or working.
No, not at all. It means your actions no longer generate karma. They no longer leave psychological residue on the mind. This state is achieved when the intellect is completely unattached to external objects, the internal organs, the mind and senses, are fully conquered, and one is totally desireless.
This is the state of becoming Brahman, of merging with the ultimate reality. The Gita says that once the supreme state is reached, the person becomes profoundly peaceful. They neither grieve for what is lost, nor do they desire what they do not have.
They have reached a state of ultimate equilibrium.
They view all beings entirely equally, whether it is a scholar, a cow, an elephant, or an outcast.
And through this profound equilibrium, one attains what Krishna calls supreme devotion.
Verse 55 outlines this. Through this supreme devotion, the seeker knows the divine in reality exactly as it is. Having known this truth, the seeker enters into the divine immediately. But I have to stop and ask a critical question here.
Go ahead.
If a person has already attained this incredibly peaceful state, if they've already realized they are Brahman, what does supreme devotion even look like? If I am one with the universe, who am I worshiping? Is it still bowing down to an idol or asking a distant god for favors?
This is where Shankaracharya's Advaita Vedanta, his philosophy of non-dualism, shines brilliantly. He clarifies that the devotion mentioned at this ultimate stage is absolutely not the transactional devotion of a separate, anxious individual begging a distant deity for a better life.
So it's not, please help me pass this exam, or please heal my sickness.
Not at all. That is dualistic devotion. Supreme devotion is the devotion of knowledge. At this stage, the illusion of separation between the individual soul, the jiva, and the supreme reality Brahman completely vanishes.
It just disappears.
Yes. You don't just see the divine as an object of worship sitting on a cloud. You realize your essential, unbreakable, mathematical oneness with it. It is devotion expressed as absolute integration. The lover, the beloved, and the act of love dissolve into one single, unified reality.
It is the drop of water finally realizing it is the ocean.
Exactly.
But Krishna doesn't stop there. He has built this massive, intricate philosophical architecture over 18 chapters, and now he is ready to deliver the final, ultimate secret to Arjuna to seal this realization.
We have reached the climax of chapter 18, and truly the crescendo of the entire Bhagavad Gita.
I want you to stop whatever you are doing for just a moment. This is the core. This is Krishna's supreme assurance to Arjuna, and by extension to you. If you take away one single paradigm-shifting idea from this entire deep dive, let it be this.
Krishna reveals the deepest hidden mechanism of reality in verse 61. He says, "The divine resides in the region of the heart of all creatures, revolving them all through Maya as though they were mounted on a machine."
Mounted on a machine, just let that image sink in. And then he delivers the ultimate teaching, the grand finale, in verse 66. Krishna says, "Abandoning all forms of rights and duties, take refuge in me alone. I shall free you from all sins. Do not grieve."
The impact of these words on Arjuna is absolute. His transformation is complete. He declares that his delusion is destroyed, his memory of his true spiritual nature is regained, and his doubts are entirely dispelled.
He's ready.
He is ready to act, standing firmly under the divine command, free from the paralysis of his ego.
When I first read verse 61 about all creatures being revolved as though mounted on a machine, I was struck by the most vivid modern analogy. Think of a massive, elaborate carousel at an amusement park. We spend our entire lives riding a carousel horse. We are gripping the brass pole. We are sweating. We are agonizing. We are kicking our legs as hard as we can, totally and utterly convinced that our own personal effort is what is making the heavy wooden horse move up and down and what is making the entire ride spin.
We are exhausted by our own perceived agency.
Exactly. We are terrified that if we stop kicking, the universe will stop turning. We carry the crushing weight of believing we are the ultimate doers, but supreme surrender. What Krishna is asking for in verse 66 is the moment you finally stop kicking. You stop sweating. You look to the center of the ride, and you realize that the massive, silent motor of the divine has been spinning the great machine of the universe the whole time.
Yes.
You aren't powering the ride. You never were. You can finally let go of the frantic effort, release your death grip on the pole, and just experience the beautiful, terrifying, majestic ride.
That is a phenomenal conceptualization of what Shankaracharya means by surrender. Because taking refuge and abandoning all duties does not mean dropping your physical tools, abandoning your children, and walking away from the responsibilities of life. Arjuna still has to fight the battle.
He still has to shoot the arrows.
Yes. The surrender is the total, radical dissolution of the ego. It is abandoning the deeply arrogant Rajasic notion of I am the doer. When you take refuge in the divine, when you realize the supreme reality is the true operator turning the wheel of Maya, the impossibly heavy burden of calculating your own karma dissolves. The exhausting task of tracking your own sins and trying to micromanage the universe vanishes. You act, but you act purely as an instrument.
I shall free you from all sins. Do not grieve. What a profound relief. The universe is being held. You are being held. You just have to realize it. The psychological relief of hearing the supreme truth is staggering, not just for Arjuna standing on a dusty chariot 5,000 years ago, but for anyone who actually pauses to hear it today.
As we move toward the conclusion of this text, it's vital to note how Sanjaya reacts. Sanjaya is the narrator, the visionary who has been remotely witnessing and recounting this entire epic dialogue to the blind King Dhritarashtra.
He's been watching it all unfold.
Right. As the vision fades and Krishna's teaching concludes, Sanjaya says his hair stands on end. He is vibrating with the magnitude of what he has just heard. He says he rejoices over and over again every single moment he remembers this sacred dialogue.
And you can completely understand why. Think about the intense, burning relevance of this today. We live in an era characterized by unprecedented burnout, chronic anxiety, and overwhelming decision fatigue.
We are exhausted from trying to control outcomes that are fundamentally beyond our control.
We are obsessed with the results Krishna warned us about. The Gita offers a direct, surgical antidote to modern suffering. True fulfillment does not come from a tropical vacation, it doesn't come from a new productivity hack, and it doesn't come from getting a promotion.
It comes from identifying your sincere duty, your Svadharma, detaching completely from the outcomes, enduring the Sattvic friction, and ultimately surrendering the heavy, suffocating burden of your ego to a higher truth.
Shankaracharya's emphasis rings just as clear across the centuries. Moksha, true ultimate liberation, is attained only when the illusion of the separate, striving ego completely dissolves in the brilliant, unified light of devotion and knowledge.
So well said.
So, to distill this massive, life-altering journey down to our absolute core takeaway for today, by surrendering the illusion of control to the divine, the soul attains ultimate freedom. It is the great paradox of spiritual life. It is the ultimate letting go that allows you, finally, to be securely held.
Surrender is not defeat. It is the absolute prerequisite for victory.
What an unbelievable journey through Chapter 18. If you found value in this climb to the summit, please remember to subscribe to Simplified Awakening, hit the like button, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Which part of the psychological operating system resonated with you the most?
We highly suggest you revisit our earlier deep dives into the previous chapters for the complete step-by-step journey through the Gita.
Yes, definitely do that. Every single chapter we've covered builds the necessary foundation to truly appreciate this ultimate view.
But as you prepare to walk back down this mountain, back into the friction and reality of your daily life, we want to leave you with a lingering, slightly provocative question. Something to let your mind chew on long after this audio stops.
Okay, let's hear it.
If every single one of our actions is driven by the ancient mechanical forces of the Gunas, and if the divine is the true hidden operator turning the great machine of the universe, where does your free will truly reside? Are we just passengers, or is our only true, authentic expression of free will simply the conscious choice to surrender?